Okay, hey everybody, this is Joe Bullis. Make sure I'm recording here, and this is for the MELS 604 course. I'm your clinical coach. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the stakeholder community involvement plan. We just kind of finished up talking about the CAAP the last time we were online, and this is the second part of the 604 course. And this used to be called the stakeholder involvement plan. And so everybody used the acronym SIP, and we started getting a lot of candidates thinking they had to analyze the school improvement plan. And so Gardner Webb changed that a few semesters ago. It's now the stakeholder community involvement plan. And basically what this is going to entail is, how is your school communicating and forming those partnerships with your external stakeholders? If you'll notice in the kind of the purpose of this plan, it talks about your internal and your external stakeholders. Your internal stakeholders, of course, are your students and your teachers and your staff. Your external stakeholders, of course, would be your parents, but not only your parents, it could also be the community, your faith-based organizations, your civic organizations, community clubs or organizations that might have an investment, for lack of a better word, an investment in your school, or a reason to be connected to your school. And so, how are you doing in terms of your internal community? How is your school communicating and partnering with the community at large, your external stakeholders? So we'll go ahead and jump into the purpose. Just wanted to give you a kind of a highlight a few key words here in this purpose. First of all, you're going to be pulling another team together. So could certainly be the team that you've used up to this point in the program, your professional learning community team. It does say in the purpose that you will work with your school administrative team. Go ahead and let your principal know what you're doing. I'm sure you're already doing that, but your site mentor, let them know this is what's coming around with this particular piece in the program. You're going to be looking at how the school is communicating and partnering with the community. You're going to come up with some recommendations, look for some gaps, kind of the things that you've done up to this point. But it does say here that you will work with your school administrative team to select, organize, and lead a team. So you're pulling back a group of individuals, and it does say here that this group of this team should be comprised of internal but also external stakeholders. Now, that can be a challenge sometime. If you're a Title I school, then this is probably going to be a lot more compartmentalized for you. You're already involved with parental engagement, family engagement. That's probably something your school focuses on, being a Title I school. You may also have a Title I planning committee, or your leadership team should have a parent representative. So if you can reach out and pull in a parent or community leader or a faith-based member or a community organization, if you can pull in some of those individuals to help you with this and be on this team, then so much the better, because you're going to need their perspective. So if you have some good parent volunteers that are coming into the building and always there and willing to help out, go ahead and recruit them into this team as well, because it does say that this team would consist of your internal and your external stakeholders. You're really going to be looking at not only the parental involvement of the school and what that parental involvement plan is. Every school has a parental involvement plan. A lot of schools pretty much mirror what's in the district parental involvement plan. Actually, that probably needs to be changed now, because I think the latest verbiage coming out of ESSA last year was your family and community engagement rather than parental involvement. You're going to hear a lot more of parental or family and community engagement. But it's still the same thing, involving those people that are in your community and welcoming them and making them a part of your school, and partner with partnering with them as well. But like I said, it's not only just about that parental involvement plan or family engagement plan, it's also about any school community outreach and partnerships. I know some businesses adopt schools, Lowe's Food. If you have a Lowe's Food grocery store in your community, a lot of times they'll adopt a school or some other business will adopt a school. So you want to talk about that as well if your school has those type of partnerships going on. But what your team is going to do is you're going to look at that. You're going to look at how your school communicates, uh, pulls in the community, recruits the community, forms those partnerships in the community, and you're going to identify some gaps in that and make recommendations and also devise a plan. It's kind of like if you'll remember, the APSL was about an action plan for student learning. The APTL was about an action plan for teacher empowerment. Think of this as an action plan for community engagement. That's kind of where this evidence is going to. So let's, and we'll get into the details in a minute. I'm going to pull on down to the rubric, but let's look at task 1 and task 2. Task 1 is you pull your team together and you conduct a needs assessment, as I said earlier, and the gaps of communication between the internal and external communities. What are some opportunities to involve the community more? What are some things that you can do to involve the community in shared decision making? Things about along those lines as well. But you're going to lead a team to do this, and you're also in task 1. Task 1 kind of has 2 parts. You're going to, and we'll talk about that more in the rubric, but you're also going to pull in a lot of your teacher working condition survey information into this task as well. As a matter of fact, a lot of the foundation for this task you can pull in from some of your other evidence. You just need to remember, in doing that and pulling in the teacher working condition survey and some of those other items that you pulled in, you want to put them within the context of community engagement and parent engagement, family engagement. You want to put that within the context of how does your internal community partner up and work with your external. So that's the context of how you need to write this. And in task 2, you want to identify some physical and human resources necessary to complete this plan, to complete this action plan. So that gives you a little bit of experience into budgeting and what human capital, what physical resources you're going to need to incorporate this plan. So that's kind of task 1 and task 2. So let's talk about that in detail. At this point, I'm just going to stop and see if anybody has any questions. If not, then we'll get into the rubric.
I do have one question.
Okay.
So you're talking about, so I'm on a couple of different committees, and we already engaged the outside world kind of. Well, I kind of started that a little bit more. So we're trying to do we do a healthy club for the teachers. Can I write about that? Because I pull in outside sources that's in our local community to come in and teach fitness classes every week for our teachers. Can that work? And
yes, it can, Candace. That sounds, and once again, as we've talked about up to this point with all of your evidences, if it's something that you're doing and that you're facilitating and kind of in the lead of right now, and it's a great program you can certainly highlight that program. As a matter of fact, it might be a good opportunity. Well, let's take a look at this and let's see if we can improve upon it in any way. But yeah, you can certainly use that. As you described it to me, as I understand it, you can certainly use that.
Okay, and then also, can I use our after-school events that I kind of head up as a part of that as well?
Yes, if it's connected with that and part of that, it might be a good opportunity once again to devise a kind of renew the marketing plan around that and get the word out a little bit more and kind of highlight those events. Yes, you can use that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, certainly. Great questions. All right, so we'll go ahead and get into task 1 and task 2. And I'm sorry, Candace, did you have another question?
No, that was it.
Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure. So let's look at the rubric of this, because there are some specifics about the task 1 and task 2 that you need to include in your narrative. I'm going to pull that on down here. Okay. Um, Basically, in the first, like I said, there's two parts of this. There's the needs assessment that you're going to conduct, and then there's the organizational analysis. The needs assessment is you really need to pull in the information that you've done in the past about the setting of your school, kind of the background information, the demographics. But once again, make sure that's in the context of the community, not just the demographics as your school, the same old, ethnicity, gender, teacher experience, things like that. But you want to talk more and more about the community as well. When you did the qualitative, I think you did a qualitative analysis in my mind just went blank. Maybe in
Orange County.
I'm sorry, what?
Was it Orange County? Was that what I did?
Oh, yeah, I was just talking in general
Okay.
for everyone. Yeah, I was thinking whatever evidence you pulled in a qualitative analysis, it might have been in the OMA, looking at the community and how does the school play into the community and set in the community. Make sure that you talk about that in the setting. The setting is just not describing the demographics of your school. The setting would be describing the demographics of the community as well. And just as you did in the ABSL, you pulled your team together and you said the purpose of the ABSL was to have an action plan on student learning through a professional learning community. Well, make sure that you state the purpose of this needs assessment. The purpose of the needs assessment is to analyze the amount of communication going on with your external stakeholders and how you're pulling in and partnering them as well. List of participants and roles, that's just the members of your team. Remember how when we went back to the ABSL, remember how you pulled in that group and you talked about their strengths and their role and responsibilities on that professional learning community? Same thing here. Who are the participants? What are their roles? What are their strengths? How are they coming into play as you look at the internal and external communication going on? How are they going to help you do that? And then you guys just kind of analyze that. Now, what can that look like? Well, that can be a parent survey, that can be a teacher survey, that can be in addition with that could be looking over your I said parental involvement plan, your family community engagement plan. Look over that. That could all be data that you pull in. Could be a focus group. Could be a focus group of parents or community members, just as Candace talked about a while ago. Could be that group that you're already working with. Do a conversation with them or survey them or interview them and say, what are we doing that's working well? But where are the areas that we can improve upon, and get your whole team involved in that conversation. And that way you can identify some of those gaps that this task is asking you to identify in the way of communication with your between your internal and external stakeholders. Once you identify those gaps, once you identify those needs that need to be, or excuse me, those areas that need to be improved, then you make a recommendation to your leadership team. This is the program, or this is what we looked at, and this is where we think we need to go with this to make it better, because this is going to kind of be the start of the marketing plan that you're going to do later on in the task. You're going to market whatever you come up with to increase community involvement, community partnerships. So that's the first part of that, and it does have to have these sections. You have to have a section on the setting, on the statement and purpose, participants and roles, analysis of findings, and recommendations. And once again, this all has to be within the context of internal and external communication. And then the second part of that is you're kind of going to go back to the teacher working condition survey, as you're going to do an organizational analysis. If you'll notice, it states here in the description right at the bottom, the instrument that you could use is the teacher working condition survey or a climate survey. But But once again, you're going to be pulling in that teacher working condition survey and utilizing that as well. And I hope you understand and really get a feel how that teacher working condition survey is a strand that's interwoven into this whole program. That's how important that that information is to you, that data is to you as a principal. That's that I tell you what, that is a instrument that you can use several different ways. The data that you get from that teacher working condition survey that's important stuff. That's stuff you need to pay attention to as an administrator, and you need to continually use that in several different areas as you work to improve the culture of your school, the climate of your school, and the student performance. But once again, that all for this task, that all has to be within the context of communication with your external stakeholders. So as you look at that teacher working condition survey, look at it through that lens. So you analyze that, you talk about the organizational setting, you get back in kind of the setting of the school, how it's organized. You can take another look of your hierarchical graphic of who reports to who. But remember, in that you wanna show like on the school leadership team, is there a parent representative? Is there a Title I planning team? And is there a parent representative? Is there a volunteer coordinator at your school that kind of volunteers all the people coming into the building, lunch buddies, grandmas and grandpas that come into the classroom to serve in some way, any type of volunteer. You want to pull all that information in as well, because that's where the focus of this is the community coming into your school, working with you in partnership. And then you pull in recommendations for the school improvement plan on that as well. So that's task one. As far as the activity and the process you go through, it's not new to you. It's a familiar process. If you'll think back to the APSL and the APTL, this is really the same type of steps that you took in those two evidences. Is just within a new context. Now in task two, as you look at making recommendations, as you begin to formulate in your mind of what we're going to do to improve in these areas, and some of the things that we saw that we would like to do, then what resources do you have on hand as an administrator? If you want to implement some new initiative, part of that feasibility study needs to be, have we got the resources to do this? What resources do we have to do this? And it's not just about money. It's not just about funding, but human capital as well. People that can come into your building, community organizations out there that can lend a hand in helping you do whatever this initiative is. And that's when you reach out to the community. You ask for donations. You make partnerships. You form relationships with those people in the community that can help you do some things that you really need to. Might be in the way of grants for your teachers, things of that nature as well. So this is all about identifying those resources, and we talk about what are you need to be thinking, what are your short-term goals, what are your long-term objectives. You need to be, what funding is necessary for your short-term objectives, what funding is necessary for your long-term objectives, and what resources in the way of human capital, as I mentioned before, are you going to need. And this is kind of all setting this up. And you're kind of as it says here where is that? I know it's somewhere. Under proficient, the candidate's role as a leader throughout the process. Don't forget that. How are you facilitating all of this? How are you leading this initiative? Make sure, as always, you kind of highlight the collaboration going on with your team, and how you guys, this is not just you by yourself doing this, but your team needs to come together. That's why having an external stakeholder on your team is very important, someone from the community, because they may know some resources out there that you're not aware of, and they can bring that into the conversation as well as you identify those resources needed. So this is a really great, I really like this evidence, because it causes people to kind of reach outside of their comfort zone and maybe begin to get an understanding of how much the community can help your school in different ways. Now, some of you may already be at a great school where the community and the parents and families are really involved, and you've already got a good understanding of how that can happen. But if not, this is good experience for candidates to reach out to the community and begin to understand that you can get a lot done if you pull in all the resources in your community to help you out. So that's basically task 1 and task 2. And then we'll, of course, when we come back again, we'll follow up with the remaining tasks in the SCIP. But are there any more questions at this time?
I do not have any right
Okay.
now.
Great. Thank you, Candace. I think I saw Jessica or maybe a few more people came on board. Yeah, there's several more participants now. That's great. Don't worry if you came in late on this, because I am recording it. I'll send that out tomorrow, and you can, any parts that you missed, you can kind of catch up on that. But does anyone have any questions?
I guess I should have some questions on the other because I'm still working on the CAP.
On the CAP. Yeah, DeMarcus, and I owe you an apology. I did get your message, but I've been in schools for the last 2 days, and I did not get that. But I'll actually, if you need for me to, I will call you tomorrow, or we can stay after everyone else goes tonight, and I stop the recording. We can stay, and I can answer some of your questions.
Okay, that sounds good, because I didn't want to miss your deadlines, or Miss Sanders, Dr. Sanders' deadlines either. So yeah,
okay, great.
I can hang around.
Yeah, just hang around. When everybody cuts out, then you and I'll go ahead and Zoom this evening. Well, okay. As always, if you do need individual Zoom session, just feel free to connect with me. Once again, a lot of this task you can pull from some stuff that you've done up to this point, so it's beneficial in that way. But just remember, as always, just put it within the context that the evidence calls for, and this evidence is calling for communication with the community. Feel free to reach out and email me if you need to. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording at this point in time. Let me do that.